What happens when a mountain gives you no path upward, only a vertical line where one mistake means there's no return? These are places where turning back isn't an option, and climbing means fully committing to the void beneath your feet. If stories of extreme terrain and impossible climbs draw you in, like the video and subscribe. Then let's begin. Mount Huashan does not rank among the highest mountains in the world. But it is widely regarded as one of the most hazardous due to the nature of its terrain rather than its elevation. Located in Shaanxi Province, China, Mount Huashan rises to approximately 2,154 meters above sea level and forms part of the Qinling mountain range, an area known for steep granite formations shaped by long-term tectonic uplift and erosion. What distinguishes Huashan is the extreme exposure of its access routes, where several sections of the trail consist of narrow wooden planks and stone steps fixed directly into near-vertical cliff faces, leaving no margin for error. Unlike high-altitude technical climbs that require ropes, ice tools, or advanced mountaineering skills, Huashan's most dangerous sections are reachable by ordinary hikers, creating a unique risk profile driven by accessibility rather than difficulty. The paths offer no permanent guardrails, and in many locations the walking surface is scarcely wider than a single footstep, with sheer drops extending hundreds of meters below. This combination of vertical exposure and pedestrian access significantly increases the likelihood of accidents caused by fatigue, fear-induced hesitation, or loss of balance, particularly in crowded conditions. Historically, Huashan has been a sacred pilgrimage site for Taoist practitioners, and its roots were established long before modern safety standards existed, meaning the infrastructure reflects spiritual tradition rather than hazard mitigation. Environmental factors such as wind, rain, and seasonal ice further amplify the danger, as moisture reduces friction on rock and wood surfaces, increasing slip probability. Rescue operations on Huashan are complex due to the narrowness of the routes and limited space for evacuation, which contributes to the severity of incidents when they occur. From a geological and human factors perspective, Mount Huashan demonstrates that mountain danger is not solely a function of altitude or technical complexity, but also of exposure, route design, and human behavior, making it a compelling example of how vertical terrain can become lethal even in the absence of extreme elevation. After leaving the sheer cliffs of China, the journey shifts westward to the Himalaya, where danger no longer comes from simple exposure, but from sustained vertical climbing at high altitude. Ama Dablam, located in Nepal's Khumbu region, rises to approximately 6,812 meters and is often regarded as one of the most visually striking mountains in the world. Yet its aesthetic symmetry conceals a demanding and unforgiving structure. The mountain is defined by steep ridgelines, narrow snow arêtes, and exposed rock sections that require advanced alpine technique rather than brute strength, particularly along the standard southwest ridge route. Unlike high-altitude giants where climbers spend long periods moving gradually upward, Ama Dablam forces continuous engagement with vertical terrain, where a single misstep can result in a fall of several hundred meters. A major objective hazard is the large hanging glacier, or serac, suspended above Camp 1, which poses a persistent risk of icefall regardless of weather conditions. Climbers must also contend with rapidly changing Himalayan weather, including strong winds and sudden snowfall that increase technical difficulty and reduce friction on already exposed surfaces. Although fixed ropes and guided expeditions are common on Ama Dablam, the mountain demands precise movement, disciplined rope management, and strong psychological resilience due to constant exposure and limited margins for error. Rescue operations are constrained by steep terrain and altitude, meaning that incidents are often difficult to resolve quickly. From a mountaineering perspective, Ama Dablam demonstrates that technical difficulty and vertical exposure can rival, and in some cases exceed, the challenges posed by much higher mountains, underscoring that elevation alone is not the primary measure of danger in alpine environments. Leaving the high-altitude drama of the Himalaya, the journey now moves north into one of the most isolated mountain landscapes on Earth, where remoteness itself becomes a primary hazard. Mount Asgard is located on Baffin Island in Canada's Arctic archipelago and rises to approximately 2,015 meters above sea level. Yet its true scale is defined not by elevation but by the immense vertical granite walls that dominate its twin-peaked structure. These near-vertical faces were carved by glacial erosion over thousands of years, leaving smooth, continuous slabs of rock that offer few natural ledges and minimal protection for climbers. Unlike mountains with established infrastructure or frequent traffic, Mount Asgard is extremely remote, requiring long approaches across glaciers and tundra, often involving days of travel before the climb even begins. The Arctic environment introduces additional complexity, as weather conditions can deteriorate rapidly, with strong winds, sudden snowfall, and prolonged periods of cold that affect both physical performance and equipment reliability. Once on the wall, retreat options are limited, and climbers may be forced to continue upward even as conditions worsen. Since descending exposed granite faces can be as dangerous as ascending them, rescue operations are severely constrained by distance, weather, and the lack of nearby support, meaning that self-sufficiency is essential at all times. From a mountaineering and risk analysis perspective, Mount Asgard exemplifies how vertical terrain combined with extreme isolation can elevate danger well beyond what its modest height might suggest, reinforcing the principle that accessibility and environment are often as critical as technical difficulty in determining a mountain's true risk profile. From the silent isolation of the Arctic, the route now drops south to Patagonia, where the primary threat is not cold or distance, but relentless wind and unstable ice. Cerro Torre rises to approximately 3,128 meters on the border between Argentina and Chile, and despite its relatively modest height, it is widely regarded as one of the most technically demanding mountains on Earth. The mountain's defining characteristic is its steep granite spire capped by thick formations of rime ice, created when moisture-laden air freezes instantly under constant high winds, often exceeding 150 km per hour. These ice formations grow outward and change shape continuously, covering solid rock with brittle, poorly bonded ice that is extremely difficult to protect with climbing gear. As a result, even highly skilled climbers face sustained vertical sections where progress is slow, protection is unreliable, and retreat can be more dangerous than continuing upward. Weather patterns in Patagonia are notoriously unstable, with short and unpredictable windows of climbable conditions, meaning teams may wait weeks for an opportunity that lasts only hours. Historical ascent attempts reflect this reality, with decades of failed expeditions and ongoing debate over what constitutes a legitimate climb of the mountain. Rescue possibilities are minimal due to frequent storms and limited visibility, and accidents often occur not during dramatic events but as a result of cumulative fatigue and prolonged exposure. From a scientific and mountaineering perspective, Cerro Torre demonstrates how atmospheric dynamics and ice physics can transform a relatively low mountain into a vertical structure of exceptional danger, where success depends as much on patience and timing as on technical ability. After battling wind and ice in Patagonia, the focus now shifts to a mountain where gravity itself becomes the dominant enemy. Mount Thor is located in Aljutuk National Park on Baffin Island, Canada, and rises to approximately 1,675 meters above sea level. Yet its reputation is defined almost entirely by its west face, which contains the tallest continuous vertical drop on Earth at roughly 1,250 meters. This immense granite wall was shaped by prolonged glacial erosion, leaving behind a smooth, uninterrupted face that averages an angle of about 105 degrees. Meaning sections of the wall actually overhang the base below. Unlike technical alpine peaks where difficulty varies with terrain, Mount Thor presents climbers with sustained vertical exposure from start to finish, offering few natural ledges for rest or protection. Accessing the mountain requires a lengthy approach across remote Arctic valleys and glaciers, adding logistical complexity and physical strain before the climb even begins. Once on the wall, climbers typically spend weeks suspended on ropes, hauling food, water, and equipment while exposed to cold temperatures, sudden storms, and powerful katabatic winds that can descend without warning. Retreat options are limited, as descending a sheer overhanging face is often as hazardous as continuing upward. And rescue capabilities are severely constrained by remoteness and weather. From a geological and risk analysis standpoint, Mount Thor represents one of the purest expressions of vertical terrain on the planet, illustrating how a mountain of moderate elevation can become extraordinarily dangerous when height is concentrated into a single, uninterrupted wall rather than distributed across a gradual slope. Leaving the realm of pure vertical walls, the journey now enters the high-altitude death zone, where extreme steepness is amplified by thin air and prolonged exposure to lethal conditions. K2's south face rises from the Baltoro Glacier in the Karakoram Range and is widely regarded as one of the most formidable mountain faces ever attempted. Combining sustained steep terrain with the physiological limits imposed by extreme altitude, K2 itself stands at 8,611 meters. And unlike many high peaks that offer relatively moderate slopes on at least one side, the south face provides no such concession, presenting long sections of hard ice, mixed rock, and unstable snow at angles that demand constant technical precision. Above 8,000 meters, oxygen levels drop to roughly a third of those at sea level, severely reducing strength, coordination, and decision-making ability, while cold temperatures and violent storms further degrade human performance. On the south face, these factors converge to create an environment where progress is slow, retreat is exceptionally dangerous, and even minor delays can become fatal. The mountain's complex terrain also channels avalanches and icefall down the face, increasing objective risk independent of climber skill. Rescue at these altitudes is extraordinarily difficult, as helicopters cannot operate effectively in the thin air and steep relief, leaving climbers largely dependent on self-rescue. From a scientific and mountaineering perspective, K2's south face illustrates how verticality combined with extreme altitude creates a multiplicative effect on risk, transforming an already dangerous mountain into one of the most unforgiving climbing environments on Earth. After confronting altitude and exposure on K2, the journey turns to a mountain where danger is driven less by height and more by instability on a massive scale. Annapurna I rises to 8,091 meters in central Nepal and is infamous not for extreme vertical walls alone, but for the lethal combination of steep terrain and persistent avalanche risk. Particularly on its south face, this face forms a vast, complex slope of ice, snow, and rock that stretches for several kilometers, creating one of the most hazardous climbing environments in the Himalaya. Unlike narrow ridges where hazards are localized, the south face of Annapurna acts as a broad funnel for avalanches and serac collapses, with objective dangers that cannot be fully mitigated by skill or experience. Snow accumulation on steep angles is highly unstable due to temperature fluctuations and heavy precipitation driven by the monsoon system, resulting in frequent large-scale releases that have historically caused a high fatality rate among climbers. Even during periods of seemingly stable weather, hidden weak layers within the snowpack can fail without warning, making timing and route choice exceptionally difficult. The steepness of the face also complicates retreat, as descending through avalanche-prone terrain often exposes climbers to greater risk than continuing upward. Rescue options are limited by altitude, weather, and terrain, and incidents frequently escalate rapidly due to trauma and hypothermia. From a geological and risk management perspective, Annapurna I's south face exemplifies how large, steep mountain systems dominated by unstable snow and ice can be more dangerous than higher or more technically demanding peaks, reinforcing its reputation as one of the deadliest major mountains on Earth. These mountains show that true danger isn't about height, but about terrain that leaves no room for mistakes. Which of these peaks surprised you the most, or is there one you think should have been on this list? And while vertical walls push human limits, some mountains challenge something even more basic: whether they can be reached at all. A journey that continues in the most impossible to reach mountains on Google Earth. Thank you for watching.